I am the product of Maryland Public Schools, and I am very proud, not for kind of my accomplishments, but for what Maryland gave me. And so, part of why I decided to run was because I realized that that opportunity is no longer guaranteed in the same way that it used to be. And so for me, what I've been really focused on is working very hard every day of my life to pay it back, knowing that life could have been very, very different for me as well as my family. And so I had the opportunity of a lifetime. Most recently, I served in the Obama administration as Michelle Obama's policy director at the White House. And before that, I served as senior advisor to John Kerry and Hillary Clinton at the State Department. And then before that, I had been a lawyer as well as in business at McKinsey. And so I have had a career in law, business, as well as government. And that's what I bring to the field. And so why am I running? I'm running because I know what can be done at the state level and at the federal level because I've done it. I'm running because I know, there was a great article that was, it was published soon after I announced. It said, Donald Trump's worst nightmare runs for governor of Maryland. And I'd like to believe, it's sort of been my badge of honor. And I will tell you that, I'd like to believe I'm not just Donald Trump's worst nightmare, but Governor Hogan. What I've been really focused on in my campaign is talking about 4 main areas: education, revitalizing our economy, protecting our environment, and supporting working families. Education I mentioned first and foremost because, as I said, I'm the daughter of public school teachers. I'm the only candidate in the field who's the product of Maryland Public Schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. I note that because it is how I got a chance to go to Yale for college and Oxford on a Marshall Scholarship and Yale Law School, because I had a fighting chance to go and compete to go into some world-class schools that allowed me to go from Woodlawn High to the White House. Under Governor Hogan's watch, our schools have gone from 1st to 5th to 6th. Part of what November showed me is that we are not teaching our kids to be citizens. We need to invest in civic education. We need to invest in arts. We need to invest in science, technology, engineering, math, because we're not going to be able to compete against neighboring states and frankly against other countries in this global economy. So for me, when it comes to education, I want to invest in a policy from cradle to career, universal pre-K, making sure we're fixing the funding inequities, because I know here in Kent County, schools are struggling. And so it depends on your zip code and your school district what kind of school and education you get. That's not right. Not in America, not in Maryland. I want to make sure that all children get hot and healthy breakfasts and lunches, because even in a state as affluent as Maryland, you still have 1/6 of children go without a proper meal. But also pieces like guaranteeing free community college. Now I know that you can hear from the Democratic field there are a lot of promises out there. Some folks have promised free college education. That's a $5 billion response, right? That's a hefty ticket. Now I would love to ultimately get there, but the reality is not in this fiscal austerity. And so what I want to do is provide to people who need the opportunity that opportunity. And so what I want to guarantee is free community college, because right now in our state, we provide as much funding for prisons and policing as we do for higher education. That's not right. When it comes to revitalizing our economy, the reality is, again, a vulnerability for Governor Hogan, because under his watch, we have had an unemployment rate between 18th and 25th. If you took out the federal jobs from our economy, we would have the worst unemployment rate in the country. And so what I want to do is invest in infrastructure, universal high-speed broadband across the state. I want to make sure that we're actually investing in multimodal transportation systems, because right now for every Marylander, that is costing us $1,500 in lost wages and wasted gas, at a time where for the first time in history, carbon emissions are the greatest emitter of pollution. But I also want to make sure that we're fostering small businesses, that we're not targeting the agricultural industry. Because the sad reality is no one is, putting sediment and nutrient pollution into the water or pesticides because they want to for the fun of it. It's because it's the cost of business, or that's how they view it. And so that's where, instead of the finger pointing and the infighting, I just want to bring us all to the table and forge compromise solutions. when it comes to protecting our environment, this is where it's a win-win if we actually approach it that way. And this is where Democrats need to start thinking about how we talk about these issues. Because we need to talk about how we protect sustainability just as we grow our economy. And so for me, it's about 4 things. I want to protect the Bay and its tributaries. And so that means making sure that whether it is the Potomac or the Patapsco or the Susquehanna or the Nanticoke or the Choptank River along which I got married. These are the issues, because if we don't, none of us will ever see our children or our grandchildren swim in the Bay. And I want to, in my lifetime, see that. And it's doable, but we have to make it a priority. The second thing I want to do is make sure that we're investing in the outdoor economy. Because whether it is the Eastern Shore or Western Maryland, we could have the best hiking, biking, birding, fishing, hunting, camping east of the Mississippi. And as governor, I will invest in access to resources and market it such that when people are thinking about where they're going to vacation, they come here. The third thing I want to do is make sure that we invest in clean energy, because again, this is where we have a win-win. Maryland consumes more energy than it produces. And so what that means is that we end up importing from neighboring states this energy that produce. Now, if we would get Congressman Harris out of the way, we could make sure that we would have a booming offshore wind industry here, that we'd be investing in solar energy. Those are the opportunities that we have here if we actually think through what are the appropriate strategies, and they're all in place. It's just a matter of getting it done. And then the fourth piece is actually taking action on climate, because this is where Republican and Democratic governors across the country, when Trump pulled us out of the Paris Treaty, signed up to the climate action. What did Governor Hogan do? Nothing. I am the only woman in the race. I'm running against 6 men at a time when out of 14 federal and statewide offices, so 8 congressmen, 2 senators, the Attorney General, Comptroller, Lieutenant Governor, and Governor, all 14 of those positions are filled by men. All 14. That's been never true in my lifetime before. It's what happens when Senator Mikulski retires and Donna Edwards lost. But the sad reality is that you can see how that is reflected in our policies. We're one of the few states in the nation that allows for rapists to have paternity rights. We come in 50th out of 50 when it comes to child care subsidies. Whether it is health care or elder care, we know what the lack of women in leadership translates into. And so when people say to me, well, you know, no man can beat Larry Hogan, my response is, well, I'm no man. And that's where we do have an incredible opportunity. And so the final thing that I wanted to end on is, how do we beat him? We know that in 2014, when Governor Hogan beat Brown by 65,000 votes, nearly 300,000 Democrats stayed home. Nearly 300,000. And the majority of those people were women, minorities, immigrants, and younger voters 18 to 29. And so I believe that I have a distinctive advantage in terms of getting those folks to turn out, because obviously being of those demographics in some way, I wish I was 18 to 29. But I think that I have an opportunity to speak to the issues that resonate with them. But my point is that I don't expect people to vote for me because I'm a woman or I'm a minority. I expect people to vote for me because I talk about the issues that folks care about. We need to appreciate the agricultural heritage of Kent County and many other parts of the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland in a way that I think we don't do as much as we should. And so part of what I want to do is focus on some efforts that are underway but need to be re-upped in a significant fashion. So one of the things that I think is critically important, and as governor I promise I would do, is to actually fund conservation efforts that actually ensure ag land preservation. So you see this sometimes done in other states, and we have at least the shell of institutions that are supposed to be doing this, but I don't think we do it nearly as well as we could. My husband had been the Secretary of Energy and Natural Resources in Delaware, and one of the most important things I saw that they would do there that I think we could absolutely apply here is, we have an Ag Preservation Foundation. We could actually grow its efforts to do 2 things. One is make sure that we are preserving land, but second, also investing in land use and better land use planning. Because this is where it is a critical part of Maryland's heritage in a way that needs to be fostered. Second, I think we need to talk about economic opportunity. And part of that is making sure that we build opportunity here in state. Because what breaks my heart is time and time again, you hear it, whether I'm in, Easton and Talbot County or here in Kent County or even in Garrett or Washington County, the number of people who say to me, my kids had to move away because after they came out of school, there were no job opportunities. And that's what breaks my heart. No parent should have to lose their child because there's no economic opportunity. And so this is where, obviously, I think we've had a lot of conversation about internet and access to it. But part of it is also making sure that, with farmers, we're helping them diversify their income streams. So for example, some of the solutions that I've seen that are most effective is actually negotiating with farmers to use land that they're not using to put solar panels on those so that they can generate income on them. And so that's where diversifying income streams is critically important. Another piece of it is stopping the finger pointing and the infighting, because this is where farmers are not going to be in the best kind of negotiating posture if they feel like they're attacked. And likewise, we're not going to be able to address the issues of pesticides and runoff in a fashion that is actually useful. And so maybe I'm not a career politician and this is self-evident, but I know that when you actually bring all of the players to the table and you say, here's the ultimate outcome, what role can each of you play? But likewise, what is the role of government? How can subsidies, and incentives provide for the best behavior? You realize that that actually does change behavior. And then the final piece of it is actually addressing a lot of the issues that are, I wouldn't say unique, but particularly felt here. Like, for example, the opioid epidemic. Obviously, Governor Hogan has announced a task force on this issue. But the sad reality is that, when I went down to Talbot County and I met with the sheriff, we talked about, Talbot County goes purple. And you realize that that was an effort that was entirely funded out of private dollars. Why in the world would the opioid epidemic, that we know the toll that it is taking on our communities, why would that be a private effort? And that's where you realize that in some ways, government has not been there for the communities that need it the most. And that's where, as governor, I would make sure that these being the top priorities in some parts would be key focal areas of my administration.